If you would have told me in 2020 that we'd see a world record average from a 10-year-old child with Leo Borromeo judging, I would have looked at you like an absolute madman. But that was before the monumental changes that have come over the course of the last year in speedcubing. The back end of 2023 introducing us to cubing becoming a realm where 6-year-olds are somehow now among the best in the world, and the seemingly inhuman levels of efficiency from Timon Koleshinsky that dominated the spring of 2024. But even with all of this lunacy and the absurdities we'd seen in the 3x3 event over the last 365 days, Yiheng Wang's 4.48 remained untouched. I find it completely ludicrous that not even Yiheng himself was able to break this record for such a long time, especially considering the breakneck pace at which he was improving, achieving 29 sub-5 averages since the day he broke the world record in June of 2023, 25 more than second place. But that first ever sub 4.5 average we saw last summer has been by nearly everybody completely understated in just how impressive that was at the time. Yiheng Wang's dominance over the past year leading into July 6th has been more so a commentary on the human mind than anything. And it's a level of dominance that, with the way cubing is heading right now, I don't think we will ever see again. The seemingly inevitable nature of the fact that no matter how much work somebody puts in to try to get to the top, there will always be someone who started when they were younger and thus are blessed with the unteachable skill to learn information as if it were a language. But for Yiheng, a large part of that language was the Rubik's Cube. So much so that now, a 10-year-old Yiheng understands how pieces move so well that the cube has become trivial to him on levels we've never seen. And finally, on July 6th, 2024, the fact that this is the case came to complete fruition in the form of what many are already calling the doom of speedcubing. Yiheng Wang's 4.36 world record average. But in round 1 of the Philippine Championship 2024, it already seemed like Yiheng's seemingly immortal record was out of reach. Because the 6.11 on his first solve was uncharacteristically chaotic from Yiheng, coming off of a historic 5 sub-5 averages in a row. I mean, it's just his first solve and he's already attracting a crowd that is completely unaware of what's to come. But this solve has some choices from Yiheng that I'm sure you'll find interesting no matter how fast you are, and it's the beginning of a masterpiece. Yiheng does the solve on yellow cross. You can scramble with a yellow top and green front to make it show up on white, like I have here. So Yiheng actually quite uncharacteristically starts the solve off with an 11 move cross. And after looking at the solve a couple of times, it's become quite clear to me that the reason he does this is simply to set up the orange and blue pair right here into a 3-mover into the front. But it is still quite a long solution for Yiheng's standards, so he starts off by simply inserting this green piece into the bottom, and he's going to solve all 3 of these kind of in the same plane of movement right here. So he's going to do a D move to put this at the back, and then he's going to actually do a regrip to right here. So he started the solve off in home grip, and now he's moving to this grip so that he can do an R2 prime, F, R. And what that did is that basically just solved both of these at the same time, and now Yiheng's left himself with a D move to solve these 3 relative to where they need to go, and then also he needs to solve this one. So he's going to finish off the cross by doing a D and U prime at the same time. And now you might be thinking that this, of course, the regular insert is the best way to finish off the cross, but Yiheng actually sets up into this 3-mover, the orange-blue like I said earlier, and how he does that is by connecting this orange to its center and then doing the F prime move. And now you can see that these 2 are already set up into a 3-mover, but this final L prime move we're going to do to solve this green edge is actually going to disrupt that. So he simply does a U move to move these 2 out of the way and then solves the cross. Now it's just the 3-mover into the front right, which is actually something that Yiheng doesn't do that often, solving pairs into the front right first, and then we have these 2 into the back left like this. And then Yiheng actually does something that you're not going to see him do that often, which is 2 rotations for 1 pair. So he's going to rotate to face these 2, and then he's going to pair them up like this, and then he's going to rotate back and insert the pair. So a pretty standard solution, but maybe one of the reasons why this solve wasn't very good for him. And then he ends up fumbling these layers a little bit while solving this blue-red into the back. So just pairing it up with R prime U2R, and then solving this one into the back. So a little bit of a locky F2L, but then he goes into this very, very interesting OLL case, which he actually solves with an algorithm that I haven't seen a lot of people use, which is basically this OLL. So he executes that just like this, into back anti-soon, which just goes like this, and he does a push move for the final U. And unfortunately, he ends up with a GC perm for PLL, one of the worst cases, and he does it with this RUFL that goes like this, but he kind of locks up on this U2 move. So you can see in the video, he kind of makes it look like 2 U moves sequentially, and then he just finishes off the PLL like so. with no AUF. Even as stated by Yiheng himself after all of this insanity you're about to witness wrapped up, the first solve just didn't feel great, citing the lockup at the end of the solve is one of the main reasons why. Going into solve 2, everything from here on out, the next 4 solves need to be the perfect combination of both luck and skill if he wants a chance to keep up his sub 5 average streak, or possibly even rival his 4.48 from over a year. Because both the slowest and fastest solves of the average don't count and the middle 3 are then averaged together, the pressure only builds from here. But considering all of this, is there a better way to go into solve 2 than with Yiheng's 12th sub 4? A fully perfect 3.97 that is nothing short of a masterclass in his solving style. Yiheng chose to do the solve on white, and it is a perfect example of not only how to take advantage of luck at the very beginning of the solve, but also throughout the entirety of it. So just taking a first look at the scramble here, there's nothing too crazy going on, no, big blocks or anything like that, but instead his entire solution is going to revolve around a pretty simple 4-move cross solution that goes like this. But going back to the very beginning, the reason this solve is so lucky for Yiheng is because of the fact that his first 2 moves of the cross solution actually set up into this pair, as well as this pair on the 3rd move. So automatically whenever we execute this solution, we're going to get 2 free pairs. And the other great thing about this is of course D2 to align the cross, and then you can actually insert this one into the back left first, and the reason you would do that is because if you inserted this one, it actually ends up breaking up these 2. So instead, of course, he just starts by inserting this one in the back left, and then this one goes perfectly into the back right. So you solve both back slots right from the jump, which is really, really nice for his look ahead going into last 2 pairs in particular. And this is the most pivotal point of this solve, because he actually has 2 options on how he can solve this pair. So his first option is to do a U prime and then rotate, and then solve these 2. And the problem with that is, whenever we see that we have this in the front right, this is a pretty terrible pair. So if you do this solution, that's not going to affect this at all. So you're going to still end up with this for last pair. But Yiheng's smart, so what he notices here is that he can actually just solve these 2 like this, and then he ends up with a much better pair for this, which you'll see. So he then of course just goes into pairing these 2 up into the back right. And then the other thing Yiheng knows about this is Yiheng never really solves pairs with F moves, so he wouldn't really solve this one into the front left. But Yiheng, noticing that this is the case he has for these 2, which, to be honest with you, he probably knew right from here that this was going to be the case, of course. But the really great thing about the solution, which is basically just luck once again, is that this is actually going to be a 3-mover whenever you end up inserting this into the front right. So then this is also, a 3-mover into the back, which is basically the best case you can get for last 2 slots after pairing the orange and blue up. And then he just goes into this OLO, and T-perm, which is a very, very nice last layer. So just basically RUF spam. So this solve was executed at 12 TPS, and no wonder. I mean, he got some really, really nice cases, and, just spamming TPS on last layer. A brilliantly planned and executed solve into the pressure continuing to ramp up for solve 3. The sub 4 on solve 2 gives Yiheng a little more breathing room to work with. And if you ask me to show you one solve that defines Yiheng Wang, it would be this one. Let me show you why. Yiheng once again does the solve on yellow cross, you can scramble with a yellow top and green front. So here in usual Yiheng Wang fashion, he is going to start the solve with an X cross. So with this blue edge already being solved at the back right here, he actually starts the solve off with an L2 to solve the red right next to it. And what you can notice here about this L2 is whenever he does it, this corner is actually already attached to this red edge. So he brings it all the way down to the bottom here and it attaches itself to this orange edge. So now we have this little 2x1 block. And of course he's going to use it to form an X cross with this blue-orange edge. So how he does that is simply with a D prime, L prime, F prime, and that solves the entirety of the cross here while also keeping this corner and edge intact. And of course, he's not going to do the D move until he inserts this edge right here where it needs to go so that he can solve the first F12 pair. So you might be tempted to solve this edge like this, which is probably how I would do it myself, but actually how Yiheng does it in the solve, which is probably the optimal way to do it, is simply by starting it in the front and then just inserting it into the back like this, and that saves you a regrip. And of course he just finishes off the X cross with a D move. And I also do think that he found these two in inspection, so he goes straight into the green red, into the front left, just pairing them up like this. And I don't know if he saw this, but these two actually end up pairing up themselves whenever you solve them. But anyway, he goes into the blue-red for his next pair by simply rotating, and then pairing them up with a left-handed sledgehammer, and then just L moves to insert the pair. And this is actually a really nice angle to get this OLO case from because it's simply a commutator algorithm, which basically means that it's only going to move these three edges, all of these corners are going to stay in place. And what that means for Yiheng here is it's going to be super easy to look into PLO because he can simply tell that these headlights aren't going to move at all. And then this edge, this orange edge, is going to come to the front right here. And then this green corner is of course going to stay where it is, which means that we are going to be getting a GC perm right here. So he knows he immediately needs to go into the U2. And then this execution of the GC perm here is once again not great, probably because of all the U2s and F2s he has to do in this alg, but still finishes it off with a 448. And there's a reason he's so happy with this third solve, not only because it of course counts a 4.48, but because it was as close to a perfect execution as you can get out of that solution up to OLL. The only reason this wasn't a low 4 is because of the fact that PLL took him 1.5 seconds. He basically spent a third of this solve just doing PLL. So now going into his fourth solve, it goes without saying that this is by far his most important. It is the deciding factor to where he'll end up going into a historic solve 5. And it includes something we've begun to see more and more of from Yiheng lately, a more creative version of the beginning of the solve than we've ever seen from him in the past, that almost resembles something someone like Timon would do. On his fourth solve, Yiheng chose to do white cross, and this is my personal favorite solve of the entire average, because he does what's known as free fop, where basically he's going to solve 3 cross pieces into the back here, and then he's going to solve a pair along with that, without solving the last cross edge. So he knows that when executing the solution for his first 3 cross edges, which looks like this, so simply aligning blue, and then solving these two in a very simple pattern like this, he knows that this pair isn't going to move at all, which means that all he needs to do, instead of just inserting this and, separating them, messing it up, he's just going to go ahead and insert the orange-blue, and I want you to watch this corner whenever he does that. So he inserts this, and then he knows that this corner is right here, and what's key to this solution is he actually also noted that this edge would be solved whenever he ends up solving these two into the back. So now all he needs to do is simply bring over the D layer like this, and then insert this orange-green corner into the front right. And now you have a double X cross into the back. So definitely a very beautiful solution from Yiheng right here. And then he simply goes into inserting the red piece like this. And then Yiheng's third pair ends up being the red-blue right here, which he inserts into the front left, like so, just breaking them up. And then this is just TPS spam from here into the same OLL that he got on the last solve, which of course, same thing I talked about on that one, which is this green edge is simply going to come to the front, and we know that headlights are going to be on the front. I don't know if he knew exactly which PLL it would be. Wouldn't be surprised though, because it's Yiheng, he would somehow figure it out. And then this is just an A-perm, and the interesting thing about Yiheng is he actually always rotates up instead of down for A-perms. So he just does it from this angle, and this alg just goes like this, with no AUF. And this solve was done at 12 TPS. And finally we arrive at solve 5. This is without a doubt one of the greatest 3x3 solves we've ever seen, with everything leading up to this moment, and a 4.34 best possible average to show for. And usually at this part of the average I would say something like, but he would need to count a high 3-second solve to do it. But Yiheng being Yiheng, this simply doesn't apply to him going into his last solve. At this point, just taking a look at the venue, everyone knows the situation. And this only brings all the more tension and pressure with it. Again, Yiheng is no stranger to such moments. In the 2023 World Championship, he was in a position nearly identical to this one. Everyone's anticipating greatness, and you have one solve to pull off a 4.37 or better to secure, in this case, the world record average. At Worlds 2023, on his final solve, Yiheng came up short, leading to a loss by 1/100th of a second. You couldn't have written a better story if you tried. He readies himself, but picks back up his warm-up cube right after setting it down to give himself just a little bit longer to mentally prepare for the moment that's to come. And now he's back, but with a different calmness than ever. How does a man clutch a 4.3 second average? Well, let's find out together. Yiheng chooses to do this solve on white cross once again, and the main thing you should take note of here in inspection is the fact that we have this 2x1 block down here, which we're going to use to form an X cross, along with its corresponding edge, which is also connected to the center, which is very, very nice. So he's actually going to start this solve by facing yellow, and his first two moves are simply to form this block here at the, the back from this angle, which is where we're doing it. So he's still holding the cube from home grip, and from here he's going to do an R prime to solve this edge, and then a D. And what this D move does is it basically connects this orange piece to its corresponding center. So we're still holding the cube from here, and then he's going to do a B prime to form this entire block. And now you can see this is a pretty good position for these two pieces, which he set himself up for. And instead of just canceling into this, like that, which is how most people would solve the cross, right, to finish off this X cross, he's actually going to do this wide R move to be facing blue. And then what he planned in inspection is actually to do a U2 and then pair up these two. And the funny thing is, if you were to just do this, you also pair up the blue-orange. So I don't know if he saw that or not, but basically what he did is, from this position, insert orange, do a U2, and then pair up blue-red. So he did get both of them into the back, which, you know, maybe that is actually more optimal than what I could have found out right there. And then for his third pair, he simply has these two, and he rotates, and then splits them up, cancels into inserting them. This is, you know, the basic insert. And then that actually ends up forming a 3-mover. Again, don't know if he saw that, but Yiheng gets a ton of 3-movers. So at this point, you really do have to ask yourself how much he's seeing while inserting the other pairs. So he rotates and then does this 3-mover into the front left. And then that actually flows really nicely into this lightning bolt case, which basically just goes like this. And then definitely a little bit of a lockup on OLL, but PLL is completely flawless here into the U2 AUF to finish off the 402 to clutch his third world record average. Yiheng's 436 world record average is a story that comes full circle. A week or two ago, he was called out for his timer starts, which led to the famous sliding controversy, to which many claimed his 0.78 2x2 world record average shouldn't count. So on his 436, he has finally achieved a world record that cannot be disputed in any way. And after witnessing everything that went down in this average, I'm gonna leave you with something to think about. We have only seen this level of dominance on 3x3 once outside of what Yiheng is doing right now. These are the top 50 3x3 average results we've ever seen. Yiheng has 39 of them. When does it get to the point that we seriously have to start asking questions like, how close is this really? Is Yiheng Wang, the patient zero of the search for the human limit of the Rubik's Cube, close to being the greatest 3x3 solver of all time? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, besides that, you thought I would forget, didn't you? You thought I would forget. You're still slower than a 6-year-old. This is your daily reminder that that is the case, and I hope you never forget. Yeah. If you somehow made it this far into the video and you still aren't subbed to the channel, you know, think about doing that maybe if you want to. Also watch this video if you want to. It's pretty similar to this one, so you might like it. Who knows? But yeah, thanks for going on that long-awaited journey with me, the first ever 3x3 world record covered on the channel. Besides that, that's about it. See ya.